Welcome to wjlive. I'm your host Olivia Brown, and this episode sponsored by Pure Bulk starts right now. Coming up, we will be having a special interview with Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida. Stay tuned and make sure that you keep watching. But right now, we're going to be talking about a special election that just happened in Alaska. It is extremely controversial because Sarah Palin went up against Mary Peltola, a Democrat. And there's a strange reason that she won. The reason is that ranked choice voting was instituted into Alaska recently. So what happened was that 60% of Republicans, 58.7 to be exact, voted Republican. But Democrat Mary Peltola won. How does this happen? Here's a video to explain.
Let's talk about the ranked choice voting and how it first could affect Sarah Palin.
Yeah, and so as Ali was just describing, the top four primary system in Alaska, and then you get to ranked choice voting when you end up having the general election. Both systems are designed to reward candidates that have crossover appeal. And so when you look at Sarah Palin, and when she decided to get into this House election, she ended up getting the most votes in the top four primary system. But her challenge then ends up becoming, when you get into ranked voting, are you going to be somebody's second choice or third choice?
That's extremely confusing for voters, and it disenfranchises voters and what they're going to say. Senator Tom Cotton had some great comments on it. He said, ranked choice voting is a scam to rig elections. 60% of Alaska voters voted Republican, but thanks to a convoluted process and ballot exhaustion, which disenfranchises voters, a Democrat won. This is just wrong that this is happening, but it is because Democrats have been pushing ranked choice voting, and it's likely to be instituted in other states coming up soon. The problem with this is, again, this was an R+9 district. It had been held by Don Young for 50 years, and there had been a Republican there since 1972. And it won overwhelmingly for Trump. So this just doesn't make sense that a Republican did not win. It all comes down to this convoluted system, ranked choice voting, and I'm sad to say it likely will be in other states coming soon, but I think that this election will be showing people why in the future they should not vote for it to go on their state's ballot. Next up, we have Byron Donalds, Congressman from Florida, talking about some hot topics that are going on right now in Florida and the United States. Pure Bulk has a variety of healthy supplements that can help push you through your workout or your work week. Go to purebulk.com and enter code WJLive to get a 15% discount on your entire order. Welcome to wjlive. Today we have Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida's District 19. Welcome, Byron.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to be with you.
So just recently, we heard that Bank of America is now going to be releasing a controversial program specifically for Black and Hispanic communities. That is in quotes because that's exactly what they said. And I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on this, that they will be getting zero down payments and no cost mortgages?
Well, look, at first blush, my concern is those are the same types of mortgages that led to the housing collapse back in 2008, 2009. And so my biggest concern is what's the underwriting standard for allowing this to happen? And look, I'm a recovering banker. I was in commercial banking back during those years. So even as you explain this to me right now, I'm very concerned about what that actually means. Like, I know that people are struggling to get housing. People are even struggling to figure out how they're going to afford housing. But lending policies like that are simply not the way. We've already seen what that has done once. And my concern is it would lead to the same issues again.
So as you just mentioned, we are going through an economic crisis. And recently you said that Biden's border crisis and fentanyl crisis is more urgent than forgiving student debt. How do you think that we can solve this fentanyl crisis?
Solving the fentanyl crisis, the big way to begin to limit it is you have to actually let border agents do their job at the southern border. Before Joe Biden became president, border agents were able to make a determination of credible fear. What that means is that if you came to the southern border illegally, the border agents were able to make a determination right then and there if you were actually fleeing persecution. And if in their determination there wasn't a fleeing of persecution or direct bodily harm, then they would not let you come into the United States. You wouldn't get processed in and given a day in court for asylum. Joe Biden has completely changed that policy. He's completely gotten rid of it. So anybody that comes to the southern border is automatically given a notice to appear for an asylum hearing. What that does, it gives the drug cartels the ability to traffic people to the southern border at all points. And so what the drug cartels are doing is they're overwhelming our border agents who are supposed to be watching the border and securing it, because they know the border agents are busy processing people coming into the United States. So they will send a group of people to intercept a member of our border patrol. And then when that border patrol member is dealing with migrants coming into the country at an illegal point of entry, then the cartel moves more fentanyl. And that's where the runners come from, who sometimes get caught. But border agents basically catch only 10% of what comes across the border. So if Joe Biden actually went back to Donald Trump border enforcement policies, that would significantly slow the flow of fentanyl into the United States.
You just mentioned President Trump. You are endorsed by him. How do you feel being endorsed by President Trump, and why do you think he chose you?
Well, I think it's an honor. I think that President Trump's recognized, how I've done the job and how I've gone about my business. And, he basically was like, you know what, this is the guy that needs to stay where he is and he endorsed me for re-election. So it's really an honor. Glad to see that he thinks so highly of me. But for me, the mission doesn't continue. The job's not done. And so we're just going to keep working hard and keep fighting to make sure that we get the policies in place that get our country get our country back on track, number one, and then number two, allows our country to flourish and continue to be the best country in the world.
Biden's press secretary just called, quote, MAGA Republicans an extreme threat to democracy. What is your response to this?
My response is that you have a White House that has floundered. They've been wrong on every issue facing America. We have rising electricity prices in the country that are hurting poor families. We have rising food prices in America that are hurting poor families. That's all the directive of Joe Biden and his administration. We've already talked about the wide open border and fentanyl killing people in every city of America. It's the number one cause of death for Americans 18 to 45. You have an economy that's flat on its back, that's in recession. And obviously people know what's happening geopolitically. Our standing in the world has decreased without question. So you have an administration that's done nothing right. And so now they have to the name call, they have to shift blame, they have to try to create a narrative around quote unquote MAGA Republicans. I think it's a joke, I think it's wrong. And if you're going to talk about somebody being a semi-fascist, look no further than the 46th president of the United States, Joe Biden. This guy ignores federal border security and immigration laws. He has ignored the rules of the SEC, allowing for the SEC to cram down all kind of regulations on our business community and our finance community. This is the guy who basically signed a climate bill, called it the Inflation Reduction Act. The members of Congress did not actually hear the bill in any committee. It was brushed by congressional Democrats. And then you have the student loan bailout, which is completely illegal and unconstitutional. Even Nancy Pelosi said it was illegal and that he didn't have the legal authority to do what he said he was going to do last week. He is an authoritarian president. And so I'm not going to listen to him about how he's going to describe people like me. I know what I stand for, and I know what he stands for, and he is the true authoritarian. This is just the White House trying to shift blame and to create a narrative because they have failed the American people.
Biden just mentioned using a tactical fighter jet, F-15, in a speech recently. Do you think that he is declaring war on the 74 million Americans that voted for Trump?
I think in terms of political war, yeah, he's been doing that. But I think in terms of his rhetoric, I think his rhetoric is outrageous. For somebody who loves to try to blame Republicans as needed to be more responsible with their language, Joe Biden is never responsible with his. So his comments were ridiculous and they were outrageous. And frankly, this is the same gas-prone, terrible messaging from Joe Biden. Nothing new. He's done this his entire political career. And so I don't want to just push it aside as a nothing burger. Like, it matters because you have the president of the United States who literally doesn't even know how to talk about the Second Amendment, whether you're for it or against it. So bring up F-15s, I mean, that's just ludicrous and it's stupid. I don't know what the man is talking about. But listen, I love when he goes out and gives these speeches because it demonstrates to the American people that the current occupant of the White House is not with us.
There was a poll by YouGov that just came out showing that a majority of Americans do believe that there has been the most political violence in history right now, and they overwhelmingly think that there is a divide in America. Why do you think that is, and how have the Democrats' rhetoric played into that?
Well, I think the divides in America are very real. I'm very concerned about this. I think just as a citizen, tribalism is not going to help our country. We have to get away from this model of if my team wins, it's great, and if your team loses, it's because you're the greatest threat to democracy. Like that's an insane proposition that can only continue to divide Americans. I think that for the Democrats, they have to stop using dog whistles. They have to stop gaslighting the American people. Joe Biden is going to go out there and say that Republicans are a threat to democracy. That's a joke. Actually, his party is the party that wants to federalize all election laws and turn every state into California. And they run the worst elections in the country. Florida actually runs the best elections in the country. So I think you have a situation where you have people who run for office are constantly trying to find the best way to get attention. And so then what they do is they start reaching for more and more incendiary language. That's something where every elected official has really got to tone that temperature down and be more responsible in the words that they choose. But the Democrats, I don't want to be, bring it up this way, but it's just the truth. The Democrats always do this. Either you're a racist or now you're a semi-fascist, or you're a threat to democracy. How about we argue the finer points of energy policy? How about we argue the finer points of tax policy, of economic policy, of the regulatory environment, of immigration policy, of what sound money is? They don't want to have those debates. And you'll never find a Democrat in their campaign strategy this fall talk about these issues. All they want to talk about is fascism or threats to democracy or stuff like that. And I think that it is wrong because what's happening is the American people are becoming more divided as a result. We are all in this together. We may not agree on every single issue, but we're still Americans. And we need to remember that first and foremost.
YouGov also put out a poll that said 1 in 5 Americans believe that there will be a civil war in America in the next 10 years. Do you think that this is a possibility?
Look, I think that if you get away from politics and you engage with people in communities all over the country, people largely get along. Americans have grown accustomed. I think this is the best thing that is the fruit, if you will, of America. Where we live in cities, we have different ways of living our lives. We choose different goals for our children. We have different political views. When we go to the supermarket or we go to the beach or we go to the mall or to the movie theater or to a ball game, people largely get along. And I think that there is a natural cohesion of Americans that's going to keep us from this thought of civil war. I don't think we're there. I don't think we're going to get there. But I do believe that politicians, Republicans and Democrats, we have to begin to think about uniting our country and not just trying to win the 24-hour news cycle.
In November, you will be going up against a Democratic opponent. What do you think are the worst policies that they will be giving to voters if she, hopefully not, wins?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, she's not going to win. She's going to lose. And, that's just the way it works. But secondarily, my Democrat opponent subscribes to the policies of Bernie Sanders. She subscribes to the policies that Raphael Warnock in Georgia has voted for. Mark Kelly in Arizona has voted for the same thing. Catherine Masto in Arizona, she's voted for the same thing. Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire voted for the same stuff. They vote in lockstep. She would do the same. Those policies lead to more inflation, which actually cripples poor families and seniors on fixed incomes. She goes down this Green New Deal line, which is only going to raise electricity prices, raise fuel prices. The rich will be fine. They can figure their way around it. It's the poor that will suffer. And it's the middle class that will become poor as a result. She believes in that stuff wholeheartedly, and she will not reverse course. And so while everybody gets caught up in the shiny objects of what happens in the news cycle, it's your economy, it's your energy policy, it's your immigration policy, it's your national security policy. Those are the things that shape the future of America. And if we can get away from the silly stuff of politics, the sideshow, and actually get to real policy, which my opponent does not support, I think Americans, the choice will be clear, and I think they'll choose Republicans, and we will win overwhelmingly.
There was recently a poll that came out from Alliance for Youth, and it showed that 56% of young black voters will be voting Democrat, and the rest 30% will be voting Republican. How can we continue to win the hearts and minds of young black voters?
Well, I think you just got to engage. And I think it's not just young black voters, it's young voters in general. You have to engage young people. I think the days of just saying, oh, we'll just focus on senior citizens and people who are, later on with kids. I'm not saying you ignore those voting groups, but young voters vote. They're going to be voting more. I think we have to explain to them the beauty of free market capitalism, of a limited federal government, and what that means for real opportunities in the United States. I think what you're seeing with younger black voters voting Republican is they've grown up in an America where they are free to choose and to be who they want to be. But if you have a heavy-handed government always bringing rules that make no sense, it actually stops opportunity. It halts the ability to achieve the American dream. I think that you have young black voters who are seeing that, and I think that as long as Republicans continue to engage these communities, you're going to see these trends continue more and more.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you can come back again either before or after the general election.
Sure, anytime.
Thank you for joining wjlive. This has been an episode sponsored by Pure Bulk. Make sure that you go to purebulk.com and use our code wjlive to get 15% off.